Well, I now move on to lesson 39, which will talk about the geminate verbs. Geminate verbs are verbs in which the second and third consonant of the root are the same. In some ways, they're kind of like the middle weak or the hollow verbs, but in some ways they are unique to themselves. In the Calperfic, geminate verbs, as illustrated by savav, which means to go around, follow a pattern that in some ways looks similar to the strong verb. So you have savav, he went around, and savaba, she went around. And by the way, that looks like a typo because it should be a simple shabah under a non-guttural rather than a composite shabah. But then in the second masculine singular, it shows up as a doubling, sabota. And here the second bet of the root is in the dagesh forte in that particular form, and note the unusual vowel. And then sabot for the second feminine singular, perfect. You lady went around. And then saboti, I went around. But then the third common plural, and again, this is the wrong vowel. It should be a simple shavah. Savavu, but then savotem, savoten, and savonu. Now, stative geminate verbs may have a different vocalization pattern. Tamam, which means to be complete, to be finished, shows up in the third masculine singular as tam, and then in the third common plural, tamu, and then in the first common plural, tamnu. Well, moving on to the cal imperfect and jussive of geminate verbs, there are two different patterns that occur for the imperfect forms. One pattern involves a kamatz under the preformative, where it doesn't reduce to shavah, and the other with a sere, so a kamatz with a holum, or a sere and a patah, whether it's an O class or an A class. And the difference is mostly between active verb and stative verb. So Yasov, he will go around, and kalal means to be light. So Yekal, he will be light, and on down the list. The sere in most of the forms, except where they get reduced to shavah. And you also have the strange form with the yod being added in the second feminine plural and third feminine plural that does show up. So that's the form there. In the second feminine singular, you get a dagesh in the bet, and that's again showing that this is a geminate form when you add something onto the end. Same thing with the lamed here, same thing with the bet here. The dagesh is a way of showing the bet, although in some forms the second bet disappears, as in the third masculine singular imperfect. Now, the imperfect tense geminate verbs may follow other vocalization patterns. Another pattern would be yisov with an I vowel, as if it were a first noon, and doing that consistently all the way through. It's almost like the bet is back assimilating. Geminate verbs usually follow only one of the congregational patterns shown here, but savav is exceptional for that it follows both the regular geminate pattern and a imitation first noon pattern. The preterite form for savav would be yasov, and that would be the imperfect, and then the vav consecutive preterite form would be vayasov, again with a kamatz hatuf. Imperative forms will tend to be the imperfect form, but drop the T, and you get sov, sovi, or with the kalal, kal. By the way, the simple stem is called kal after this form. And then kali, and then in the plural, sovu and suvena, and it's kalu and kalna for the kalal. Infinitive constructs would be the same as the imperative sov, but when you add suffixes, it goes from the O to the U. Again, O's and U's interchange in Hebrew relatively easily. So you get subi, my going around, and subaka, you're going around. The kal infinitive absolute, savov, happens to be regular, though the infinitive construct may sometimes appear in place of the infinitive absolute. Another geminate that's irregular is arar, which means to curse. And it differs slightly from other geminate verbs because the resh cannot be doubled with a dagesh forte. And when the paradigm calls for a doubled letter, such as in the form sabota, these forms exhibit compensatory lengthening instead. And so that's what you would expect. And with arar, here he gives you just some sample examples of other forms. The imperfect is yaor, he will be cursed, and then oru, curse as a command, and then oraim, cursers, so those who curse, participle, which happens to be actually regular, like the strong verb. And then arur is cursed. Again, that's a regular looking passive participle. Again, you can add pronominal suffixes onto the geminate verbs. It will modify the vowels in certain cases. So for example, if you take the form yasov, he will go around or surround, and add an object suffix ni, ani. It goes from the O between the samik and the bet to a kibbutz U, and so you end up with yasubeni. And you need to have a short vowel because this is now a unaccented closed syllable, which requires a short vowel. Holem is a long vowel. Kibbutz would be a short vowel. Could have gone to a kamatz hatuf in theory, but it goes from the O to the U. And note that the propretonic kamatz reduces to shava as well. And so anyway, that's a bit about pronominal suffixes. Again, in the long run, you're not going to be producing these forms. You're going to be just having to recognize them in context. And again, with the tools that you have, you can right-click and it'll take you to Brown Driver Briggs, which will help you to discern which form is which stem. In the nifel of the geminates, have the paradigm here of savav in the nifal. Perfect would be nasav. He went around for himself or something like that. And then when you add a kamatse, a feminine ending, then the doubling shows back up, which indicates that the real root is sabab. And the sabota is similar to the kal in that regard, except with the prefix nun to indicate it's a nifal. In the imperfect, the noon assimilates, but you don't get the kamats that you're used to in the geminate nifal imperfects. But the dagesh in the Samic is a indication that this is, in fact, a nifal type form. The imperative with the hey, you also get the doubling, the assimilation of the noon. The participle is nasav, as the masculine singular form, and then when you add endings, the propretonic kamats reduces to shava, and the kamats here becomes a patah, and you get a doubling, again betraying the fact that this is a geminate. And you see the infinitive construct and the infinitive absolute forms there. In the PL, geminate verbs follow the same vocalization pattern as the regular verb hillel, to praise, which illustrates the pattern. So hillel, he praised, hillala, she praised. The imperfect prefix yod with the shava looks very regular, yeh hallel, and on down the list. By nailing down the middle consonant with a dagesh, you also limit what kind of mischief it can do. So it's a fairly regular pattern here. And of course the PL by nature will double the middle consonant. As far as the hiphil, the prefix thou on the hiphil of geminate verbs is long, as with the hollow verbs, but unlike the hollow verbs, geminate verbs do not have the historically long I-class heric yod as the second full vowel, but a sere. So a hollow verb like kum would be hekim, but the geminate perfect would be hesev. Again, no heric yod. There he gives you a partial paradigm of geminate forms in the hiphil, hey shave and hey sheba. Again, certain forms will double that bet, indicating that the real root is Samic bet. The imperfect, like the middle weak, will have the preformative with the kamats under it in most forms, except those forms where the kamats reduces to shabab when it becomes propretonic. And the vav consecutive, it goes from a long E to a short E, and the accent recedes, vayashev. And then the jussive is yasev. I should have said vayasev and yasev. And then the imperative, hasev, which is similar to the perfect other than the vowel, and also the participle may. And when you add the other endings, you get the doubling of the bet to indicate that this is in fact a geminate. And I noticed another typo here. There should be a heric under that bet there. Hafals are husav with a u vowel all the way through, and also the imperfect yusav. And then guttural geminate verbs in the hiphil will have the hey ra, where it shortens the form in the perfect, to hey ra. And then in the imperfect, there's the two patterns. One would be yara or yareya. But it'll have a preformative with the kamats under it in most of those forms. So anyway, that's an introduction to the chapter. Vocabulary: arar to curse, and damam to be silent or dumb, halal in the nifal to defile oneself, and the hiphil to pollute. And then there's root number 2 that means in the hiphil to begin. Yetsav in the hithpael to take one's stand, marad to measure, morar to be bitter, sabav to go around or to surround. I don't have time to go through all the vocabulary, but it's pretty straightforward, and look at the biforms that are there. And we'll talk to you next time.